nestled in the wooded vale between Coalbrookdale and the Wrekin. A shallow stream threads its way over 7 mossy stepping stones. On one bank lie the crumbling remains of what was once Stepping Stone Farm, and local whisperers shun the spot after dusk, for they claim uncanny things stir beneath the moonlight. More than 30 years ago, one sweltering August noon, Robert Redblake Carsan, senior partner in the London ivory firm of Carsan, Hunter & Co., strode into the Fox and Greyhound Inn at Coalbrookdale and ordered lunch. With the dining room to himself, his gaze alighted on a large oil painting opposite him, a sparkling stream spanned by 7 stout stones, beyond which a broad white path lay framed by towering pines. Carsan admired the realism. The trees rustled in his mind's ear. Their shadows seemed alive, too, shadows that spoke of hidden depths. The water babbled in shallow runs, yet around the central stepping stone it lay still and green as if concealing a fathomless pool. A sudden chill crept through him as he drank in the scene. An ineffable loneliness clung to it. Then, in a blink, the center stone quivered. Carsan blinked and rubbed his eyes, but it still trembled, and upon it a blurred figure seemed to sway. Seconds later, the motion ceased, leaving the stone rigid and cruelly still, as though it had performed some secret drama. Driven by curiosity, Carsan rose and crossed the room, standing barely a foot from the canvas. He felt drawn into its world, a silent observer of some strange ritual. Running his eyes to one corner, he found the artist's signature, Ralph L. Wetherall. "My old friend," he murmured. Years ago at Harley's Dempster's house, Wetherall had been the keenest draftsman among their comrades. He had dreamed of the Slade School, sketched caricatures for their study walls, and painted, at term's end, a river scene that hung over the mantelpiece. Rumor had it, his timber merchant father opposed any artistic venture, but Ralph insisted. What had become of him? Carsan tried to shake off the thought, dismissing the rocking stone as a trick of his imagination. But when the landlord arrived at his summons, Carsan seized the chance to ask after the picture's origin. "Bought it from a woman named Griffiths," explained the innkeeper. "She lives at Stepping Stone Farm," said the artist, lodged with her butt left. "Broke, she says, and owing her rent. I took the painting off her hands for a song." "Do you know where he went?" Carsan pressed. The landlord shook his head. "Mrs. Griffiths never mentioned it." Carsan, feeling inexplicably restless under the afternoon sun, thanked him and set off on foot for the farm. Within the hour he stood beneath the very avenue of pines in the painting, the white path glowing between their trunks. The same haunting solitude clung to the place. He followed the path to the stream where, sure enough, 7 stepping stones rose from the water. He paused at their edge, recalling tales of Norwegian rivers where one full step meant a fatal plunge. Compared to those torrents, this brook was harmless, but here, at the central stone, the deep green pool looked unnatural. A shadow brushed its surface, though no object stirred. The rounded turtleback stone groaned under his weight. It shifted, not with the rocking he had seen in the inn, but with a sidling, alive movement. Alarm burned in his chest. He hesitated, then leaped forward. Instantly he felt a tug, as though unseen hands sought to pull him back. Summoning all his will, he forced himself across the last stones to the far bank. There the world righted itself. The stone lay firm, and a stray sunbeam turned the pool almost cheerful. Carsan strode up the rose-clad farmhouse and knocked. The door opened on a thin, worn woman in her middle years. "Mrs. Griffiths?" he asked. I'm an old school friend of Ralph Wither. He boarded here once. Her eyes narrowed as she looked him over. Yes, he stayed 6 months. Left 2 years ago last May, she admitted. Owed me rent, he did. Left no address. I sent his bills back to the dead letter office. I saw a painting by him today, Casson said eagerly. I wanted to know where he went. The woman shrugged. I've never heard from him since. As they spoke, Casson's eye caught something above the clock. A striped scarf of chocolate, white and blue, emblazoned with the letters H.C. That's my old house's colours, Casson cried, pointing. But when Mrs. Griffiths turned, the scarf was gone, replaced by a comical almanac of a girl and her tennis racket. You're overworked, Mrs. Griffiths chided. Rest, and your eyes will clear. Convinced his nerves were to blame, Carson set out after tea to lie on the grassy bank. The trees whispered overhead. The water babbled endlessly. At times he fancied it sighed his name. Carson, Carson. Shadows on the path danced and contorted as dusk fell, and dread crept into him. He forced himself back to the house, convinced that daylight would chase away every fear. That night, shortly after 2 o'clock, he awoke to an icy certainty someone lurked just outside his door. He bolted it and sat for hours in darkness, dismissing it at dawn as pure nerves. Over the next day he explored the fields. By the stream he found a boy hooking raw meat to a line. The child's face was grotesque, eyes heavy-lidded, skull misshapen, mouth cruel. Who are you? Casson demanded. I'm Ephraim Owen Lloyd, the boy growled. You've no right to fish here unless my mother's told you. Casson, repelled, returned to the stones, where once again he glimpsed a man in flannels and a chocolate white-blue blazer sauntering past the farmhouse. When he burst into the yard, eager to speak with his old friend, only Ephraim and the silent Mrs. Griffiths confronted him, insisting no one else had passed. That night the candle by his bedside wavered on its own and died, and Casson buried himself under the covers until morning. The following afternoon, a scream led him back to the stream, where he discovered Ephraim torturing a black and white cat, tied and helpless. Rage made Carson spring forward. He thrashed the boy until he lay sobbing, then carried the bleeding creature back to the farmhouse. Mrs. Griffiths only shrugged, calling cats a pest. Casson paid his week's rent in full and fled to the police in Coalbrookdale, who could do nothing without proof. Determined, he hired 2 labourers to return with him. At the 3rd stepping stone, they pried the centre slab aside and uncovered a deep shaft at its base. Within lay 3 skeletons. One, stripped of all flesh, was unidentifiable. A second wore ragged clothing and a signet ring bearing RLW, undoubtedly Ralph Witherall. And the third, much smaller, bore a steel collar with the same initials. The local solicitor confirmed that Witherall's family had last heard from him just as he vanished from the farm, and that a generous investment awaited him, a fortune hardly befitting a penniless lodger. Witnesses recalled his large black retriever's playful presence on the lawn. Mrs. Griffiths professed astonishment at the bones in the shaft, insisting Ralph must have departed with his dog. Casson, however, remained certain that she and Ephraim had lured Witherall and another, yet unknown man, to their deaths by means of the treacherous central stone. In the end, the coroner returned a verdict of death from misadventure. Yet to this day, on moonlit nights, travellers report the soft jingle of a collar, the rustle of unseen paws, and a lone figure swaying on the centre stepping stone, remnants, perhaps, of the price an artist paid for his art. and of a family's cruel design? Is tonight's whisper merely the wind, or the long-lost voice of some restless soul brushing your shoulder as the credits roll? Leave your theories, strange encounters, and half-forgotten dreams in the comments below. Did you feel that sudden chill? If your pulse raced at the last word, hit like to show you're still with us in the dark. Share this video with anyone brave enough to walk these shadowed paths, and remember to subscribe. Ring that bell so the lantern never goes out, and you won't miss the next tale that crawls from Britain's forgotten places. We'll be back soon with another story to haunt your hearth and stir your blood. Until then, keep one eye open at midnight, for here on Britain's Haunted Tales, you never know who or what is listening.